Welcome, ladies. Welcome. I'm excited to connect with you via video conferencing, and I'm just excited that there's no divide between us. It doesn't matter how far we are able to connect and empower and inspire each other. So one of the things that I sent out in the email is a question of what characteristic or what innate characteristic is inside of a woman that comes so easily. And one of the characteristics that I wanted to focus on was nurturing. This is something that we do, I think, more easily than men do. It comes very naturally for us. And that gift, that characteristic rather, allows us to bring life around us in people and also in things like plants. You know, we know what to do a lot of times. I usually stick to the plants that are indoor because they're low maintenance, but I understand how to create an environment where those plants can thrive, and that is an aspect of nurturing. And we see this a lot more clearly with upbringing of children and our nieces and our nephews and our grandchildren. We can see how easily we will do certain things to nurture them. And one of those key things is creating an environment where they feel comfortable and at home. Even if it's a friend of a friend's child, you know, you do certain things like make sure there's toys available for them to play with, prepare some type of sweet or give them a candy, have conversations or try to connect with them on a level that they understand. And this is just a part of who we are. It comes a little bit more naturally. So my focus, though, is how does nurturing, that very awesome characteristic inside of each woman by design, can be utilized as a weapon that, you know, where we nurture something that is meant to destroy us, its very intention is to destroy us. So I'm going to focus more on how can we identify those things, give you some examples, and I know that you will be able to kind of search a little bit deeper and see where this possibly is happening. So the first thing I want to do is define what nurture stands for, what it means as defined by the dictionary. It says that nurture means to feed and protect, to support and encourage, as in a period of training or development, to foster, to bring up, train, and educate. The noun aspect of this word means to rearing, upbringing, training, education, or the like, development, something that nourishes, nourishment, food. So I want to kind of talk about that, break down the definition a little bit more, where we can apply it to our lives. And I want you to know that our calls yesterday were very successful, where we were all able to identify some things that we possibly nurture that causes us pain, and I know that it would happen for you also. And then I will talk about how we can create an environment of life. So in those areas that we feel hindered and feel like we're not growing, what can we do? You know, we can use the same aspect, the same tool to bring life into our lives. The characteristic of nurturing in women can be used as a tool against them in relation to areas in their life that cause them pain and disappointment. So that very innate characteristic that we have by design, it comes easily for us to nurture things, to give things attention, to know what it needs so that it can grow and be healthy and develop and bear the fruit that it is intended to do, can be the same exact tool or to be used as a weapon against us. So we can knowingly and unknowingly protect areas of our heart that are there, and its intention is to destroy it or destroy us. When we nurture, we give that area of our lives everything that is needed for its survival. So one of the examples I wanted to give in the word, in the aspect of nurturing and protecting something, is being a teenager. I remember just living, growing up in a dysfunctional home and experiencing some very traumatic things. And I remember a period of time where I literally did not even think about it. I didn't even acknowledge or even remember that this was something a part of my life. I really have no idea how that part of my life was blank. It's I don't know how I did it, point blank. But I know once I hit puberty, I began to bear fruit that were very destructive. I became a very destructive teenager. I began to not care about myself, nor did I care about the ones that I love. And I didn't understand it. It's like something just hit me. And we know, even in our own lives, that transition for a young woman is very interesting, right? A lot of people say that, teenagers become very crazy at that time. But, for me, it was the most painful time in my life because everything that I had experienced as a very young child it seemed like it just started flooding in. And I began to live destructively. And I didn't understand how this happened. I just couldn't get why this even occurred and why I was experiencing it at that moment of my life, which is a very key moment. I'm in the middle of high school and middle school, and, this is the time where you start to do a lot of fun things, but instead for me, I immediately started to find things to separate me from the memories of my past. So just to connect this to what we're talking about, we tend to, when we experience things that are very painful, instead of dealing with those things in a very healthy manner, what we tend to do is, kind of tuck it away in the back of our minds. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to deal with it. We want to pretend as if it didn't exist a lot of times. Or we do talk about it, but then those feelings that we felt of inadequacy, insecurity, pain, shame, guilt, whatever that is, starts flooding in, and we immediately say, you know what, let me tuck this back where it was so I don't have to feel how I felt back then or in that experience or in that situation. And what happens is this aspect of nurturing, because that very painful seed, we'll look at those things as seeds. What they tend to do is they love that environment. They love an environment where they're not addressed. They love an environment where they're tucked away, because what they do is they begin to spring forth roots in our lives. And we know as women, and you see the beautiful plants around the environment, and I know in Kenya and Ghana, it's so beautiful there. I saw so many plants being in Kenya, so I'm sure it's the same in Ghana. Just how that, first of all, when they plant a seed, the first thing that it has to do to survive is it has to spring forth roots. If that seed doesn't bring forth roots, it cannot spring forth a flower or fruit or whatever it is supposed to become, right? So what happens when we tuck away that seed of that pain or that experience in our life, it is loving that environment. That is an environment that it thrives in, because we're not addressing it in a healthy manner. And what it did, and what it does, and what it did inside of my life is it bear fruit at some point, because I gave it so much time and no one was there to help me deal with this and acknowledge this and face it. I didn't know. It began to grow. So when I hit puberty, I began to bear fruit of destructiveness. And this may look different for everybody, but I just wanted to give us a tangible example that you can possibly relate to. That when we don't deal with things in a healthy manner, when we tuck it away, or when we nurture it by protecting it, because truly what you're doing is you're protecting that experience by not destroying it. When we don't destroy it by addressing it, facing it, releasing it, doing what's necessary like forgiveness and different things that will benefit us, then what happens is it brings forth more fruit in our lives. And it's not the fruit that we want to see occur. And we wonder a lot of times, why am I here? So what I want you to encourage you to do is, as we continue to talk about this concept, that you will just kind of think about, what is that thing, inside of me that continues to spring up and that brings back these feelings of inadequacy, insecurity, that makes me feel like I'm just not enough, or makes me feel shameful, like I'm guilty. And whatever that is, this is the time to address it and uproot it so that you can move forward in your life and be fruitful in an area that you haven't bore fruit before. So we know, and it made me think about the example of weeds. If you don't take weeds out of your garden, it will take over your garden. And even though you're doing all these very good things, and there's very much good inside of you, and you're precious, you're passionate, you're creative, because you're not dealing with that weed aspect of your life, it will begin to take over. It will bear fruit in some way, shape, or form. So that's how, one of the ways how nurturing, because of that aspect of protecting it, tucking it away, and not addressing it, because that's one of the key environments of being, of allowing that seed of in that experience to bear fruit, is not addressing it, not facing it. It loves it. It thrives in it, because you think it's gone away because you're not focusing on it in a healthy manner. You think that it's fine, but what it's truly doing is growing. It's growing something inside of your heart. So think about those areas in your life that you have been focusing on, by giving attention to it, and by that, you've been assisting it to develop a root or stronghold in your life. So think about it, that area of your life, and how have you focused on it? Because even how we focus on it is important. If we're not focusing on it in a healthy manner, then, and we're just focusing on it, and we are festering and allowing those emotions and feelings to come back, and allow those feelings to shape who we are and how we interact with each other, then that's not a good focus. We're just feeding it. We're just feeding that experience. We're feeding what's happening and what happened inside of us. So then we feel overwhelmed, and again, we tuck it back away. We don't want to deal with it. Again, and what we're doing is we're encouraging it to live. And we don't want it to live. We don't want it to have power over our life. We don't want it to dictate anything. We want to live fully passionate and fully whole in our lives. So when we nurture the things that are causing us great pain, we are then trained by it. One of the definitions, if you remember, it says to bring up, to train, and to educate. And one of the things, like I gave you that example with me being a teenager, not dealing with those things, or not really at that moment, up to that point, I was a child. I didn't have a mature adult there helping me acknowledge and deal and heal with that situation in my life. What then happened when I became a teenager is now I then became a student of this experience. This experience was now dictating to me how I should feel about myself, how I should interact with myself, how I should interact with those that I love, how I should feel and think, and it dictated how I begin to go out and deal with that, and separate myself from that experience in itself. So if we don't deal with these situations in our life in a healthy manner, you then you're vulnerable to become a student of it, to allow it to dictate to you how you should feel and how you should self-reflect, how you should envision yourself. And then it become a constant hindrance. Even if you don't think about something, and if you don't deal with it, and you just kind of tuck it away, it doesn't mean that it's not affecting your life. And that's something that I learned I learned overall over time. You have to deal with it. It's there, regardless if you acknowledge it or not. It's kind of like passing by the same room every day, and all of a sudden you see something that you probably forgot you placed there, and all the while it was there the whole time, but just because you didn't look in that place and you didn't acknowledge it or turn to see where it was or look for it, you just didn't see it, but it didn't mean that it didn't exist, right? So it teaches us how to connect with others around us. It teaches us how to interact with those that we love. And it reminds me of the concept that says that hurting people hurt people. And it's one of the key things that we see in our world today, that people interact, they hurt people because they are hurt. They are broken in those areas of their life. So they're unable to give something that they don't have themselves, that they have not experienced themselves. So we can't expect them to interact with someone who loves them in a healthy manner, because they have been in pain and they're broken in those areas. So now the table has turned, and they then become the perpetrator. They become the ones that are hurting others. So this is something that we don't want to happen. We want to be renewed in the areas of our lives, and Scripture tells us to be renewed in the spirit of our mind. We want to be renewed to the point that that situation, that experience, that comment, that statement, that action or inaction on a part of others do not affect us in ways that will cause us to allow it to be a weapon used against us. So I want you to kind of think about that. How in areas, how have you dealt with this consciously and unconsciously? You know, how have you dealt with certain things consciously and unconsciously? You're nurturing it, you're protecting it, you are feeding it by not dealing with it, by allowing it to dictate to you how you should feel about yourself. And that's important for you to identify. So some of the questions that we talked about yesterday on the call was, what are some things that you nurture now that can cause you grief? What are some things that cause you to feel disappointed in yourself or others, that causes you to become less productive or occupies your thoughts to the point where it's hard to release those things? What are you remembering that rush back the feelings of insecurity? So these are a few things that I think will help you identify areas of your life that you possibly have unconsciously protected, and that's when that characteristic of nurturing can be utilized as a weapon against us. So think about that. Email me if you want to talk about that a little bit more so we can dig that out. One of the other examples that I think is so key is just words. Words definitely are seeds. And sometimes, we or others, may say something and we don't even realize how that word transforms and it becomes something totally different. And I gave the example yesterday on the call of I remember a situation where my boss called me in the office and one of the staff members were not performing in a way that she was pleased with. And my immediate thought was, how can I approach this staff member and how can I encourage them to produce better results, and so that my boss and even I and the staff and everybody else can see truly what their potential is, because I really truly believe that this individual had the potential to produce excellence, but they just was kind of slacking. So what we tend to do is we can easily get offended, and we can easily take a word that was intended to really be constructive, but all of a sudden it seems like as that word begins to travel into our ears, it becomes something totally different, and we immediately feel inadequate, insecure. We feel like we're not good enough and we're not able to perform. Like, it becomes this horrible self-reflection, and it could not be that the person even intended it to be that way, but I know for women that's something that we tend to do, is like we take that word and it becomes something totally different, and then that narrative that we then hear and read becomes so huge, and it becomes a big wall against us, and we become defensive and hurt by those words. And so it's interesting how that can happen. And what then happens is those words in themselves can become seeds again. And because we're thinking about it, we meditating on it, festering over it, we upset because we didn't understand why she would say that, and I don't agree with her, and it becomes this battle. And then next thing you know, we are feeling so inadequate and so like we're not enough. But what I've learned to do is I will create it, I will make it a challenge, and I will come up with a solution, and I will nurture the aspects of me that I am strong in. And I love working with people. So the biggest thing that I know I could do in that situation was to go to that staff member and ask them what's going on, and then build them up and encourage them to perform at a different level. Instead of I separated it from me and making it personal to me, instead of I took it for what it was. It was criticism about a staff member, and I took it as a challenge rather than allowing it to become more than that. So this is something that we can easily do. We can internalize the most simplest words and fester over it, and then we create an environment, in our jobs, in our homes, wherever we are, that matches that feeling of frustration and anger and disagreement. And what that does is create an environment for that to grow, and then you become separated from that person. You become distant from that environment or that individual involved in that. So holding on to the feelings of disappointment, anger, unworthiness will cause you to walk in a mindset and react to life in a way and respond to others in a way that is truly not what it is. You become defensive. You walk in a room and you may, see another woman and immediately feel small, and you shouldn't, because you bring something unique to the table. So what are you nurturing? What have you heard before? What have you experienced? What have you thought about? What relationship has caused you to feel insignificant and caused you to feel insecure? And instead of dealing with that and facing that and releasing that and forgiving that, what have you done to allow it to grow? And now what you do is you perceive life in your relationships from that one experience or several experiences. So while you're holding on to those things, one of the things you can definitely do is shut down. You can start nurturing those feelings by shutting down, by being silent, by being quiet, by not interacting with people as you normally would. You are then cultivating those memories. You are promoting and displaying that in your life. And that's what happens. You can't help but show it and demonstrate it. And then people interact with you that way, and you become hurt because they're not understanding and seeing what you're going through at the moment. Because by design, we are nurturers. We literally can make things grow. And what I'm encouraging you to do is to figure out what aspect of what situation, what experience, what words, what relationship, what has caused you to shut down. What areas of your life literally that you haven't addressed, and by not addressing it, you truly have created an environment for that to grow and for that to dictate to you how you feel about yourself. And that is not what God wants you to do. That is not what He wants you to do at all. Because there's good inside of you, there's purpose inside of you. And some of you may feel stuck. And what I encourage you to do is to create an environment that nurtures where you want to be, what you want to do. Create an environment that feeds the good that you want to receive in your life. Do not focus on the areas of the things in your life that you've experienced in such a way that it repeats a narrative in your mind that causes you to be dictated by it. Refuse to allow it to take another moment of your life. You are a nurturer by design for the reasons that you are able to give life to things that are dead. You are able to give life to broken people and broken things. You are able to give life to things that have not yet developed, into what God has designed it to be. That's the whole point of gardening. You know what the seed is supposed to produce, but when you placed it in the ground, it's then up to you as the gardener to nurture it, to feed it, to do whatever it takes to cultivate an environment for it to grow. So I want you to transition that same innate characteristic in your life. Nurture what gives life, creativity, freedom, and hope. And you're definitely able to do that. But I want you to think about it, think about these things. What have you not faced? What have you not dealt with? What have you literally shut down or shut off? And just know that it's not gone. So now it's time to say, I deserve you notice. I'm going to deal with you in a healthy manner. I'm going to release you, and I'm going to forgive what needs to be forgiven. Knowing and understanding that forgiveness frees me to be creative, to be fruitful in my life, and to bear fruit that I love. And also, it allows you and me to see ourselves in the ways that God has truly created us to be, because He is definitely proud of you. He is proud of us. You're in this life. I just posted a quote. You are in this life because you're strong enough to be in it. So use that strength to live even more. In order to regain what is lost in life circumstances and experiences, you have to nurture it. Create an environment that cultivates freedom and life. Do whatever it takes to take back what life has taken from you by destroying what is intended to destroy you. Turn that thing around. You are able to do that. Ladies, be encouraged. I'm excited. Again, email me. My email is WLORAKC, K as in kite, C as in cat, 324@yahoo.com. Email me your questions. Let me know how this session has helped you to identify some things. Talk to me and I will talk back to you. No matter where you are in the world, here in the States or abroad, there is no distance between me and you. We are now connected. Be renewed, ladies, and God bless.